Go ahead and install and configure our provisioning server, and this is just going to be a quick video tutorial on that. So obviously, as usual, we're going to simply go ahead and log into a local administrator, and of course this is our DHCP configured IP, so we'll have to go ahead and assign a static IP and then join it with the domain as well. So for that, I have written a small script, so I'm going to go ahead and utilize that, so to conserve some time. There you go, and the IP address is going to be 40. Okay. And right now, as you see, this is DHCP assign, and momentarily it will change to IP address 40. And then automatically it would restart the machine. There you go. Okay, so once it restarts, so we're going to go ahead and install the provisioning server rather. Now, for the provisioning server, what we need to do is we need to first install the server, and then it will ask you to install the console. And once you have finished installing the console, it will finish installing the server as well. So it's a two-part process. So bear with me, and I'll show that to you momentarily. So there you go. We're going to log in as a domain administrator. Again, for the live environment, we are simply using our built-in administrator. Folks, so just double check on the IP address, and there you have it. So the IP address was assigned as well. Now I'm simply going to go ahead and switch off the publisher revocation check. So I'm going to uncheck that. So I'm going to go into control panel, internet options, advanced, and under security, check for publishers certificate revocation list. Alright, so this is just to speed up the process, okay? Alright, so as I mentioned, we're gonna go ahead with the server installation first. So install, yes. And of course, it's going to install all the prerequisites. Now, while it's doing that, we're simply going to go back to our SQL server. In this case, it was CDC, our Citrix delivery controller. In here, we're simply going to switch on the SQL browser. Otherwise, installation is going to error out. Okay. So under SQL browser, which is currently disabled, we're going to go ahead and enable that automatic, and then we're going to simply start that, and there you go, it's running. And for this as well, we could actually automatic as well. If we try to start, it's going to just stop automatically, so we're not going to bother with that. Okay, we're going to go back to our provisioning server and accept the license terms. Now, user, administrator, and we're simply going to call it the same thing as our domain. And we're going to install it for all the users. And as I'd mentioned previously, this asks for the console because it's not detected, so we're simply going to go keep that in the background, and we're going to go ahead and install the provisioning console over here. Accept the license terms. Haha, I was just going to show you my password. Force of habit. Alright, now we're going to go back to our provisioning services pop-up, and since our DHCP is on another computer, we're going to say the service runs on another computer. Of course our Pixie boot service is on here, and we're going to go with that. Now before we proceed further, we want to make sure that our DHCP scope has been registered as well, because otherwise it's not going to work. Alright, so we don't have that as of yet. So we do have our so we're gonna go ahead and create a new scope in here. Actually, we already have that scope, so we're gonna name this a little bit better. So it's called NCI. Okay, I'm gonna say PVS. Alright, so we have our scope. Now we're going to go ahead and configure the options, and we're configuring the options number 66 and 67. So this is basically where which one is our TFTP boot server. So this would be our provisioning server for now, so this is where we're going to be Pixie booting from. So we can give the IP address 172.16.10.40 and the file name. So in this case, ardbp32.bin. Apply, and we have configured our DHCP scope options now. We'll go back to our PVS server. And we're going to go ahead and create a farm. Now this farm is not the same thing as the regular Citrix farm. This is actually the provisioning, so we'll keep that in mind. And we're going to call this, the server name is this is a database server, so this is going to be the NCI CDC 01.netsoft.internal, and it's SQL Express. See? Alright, so we don't have a failover partner as of yet. We're gonna leave everything the same, and then we're gonna come back and change it. And for this, we're gonna go ahead and create a new PVS store. And validate. So we're gonna simply go ahead and validate that. And if this was wrong, it wouldn't have proceeded. See? It will give you some kind of an error. There you go. So it's important that you validate this. It doesn't give you a successful validation, it just passes you through. And if we have a specified SQL account, we could give that, or rather the provisioning account, we could give that. But again, this is a test environment. We're simply going to go ahead with our default account. We're going to uncheck that. And if we had more than one NIC, we could actually provision that over here, and of course use the TFTP. Keep in mind this is what we had assigned in 67 option, DHCP option number 67. and of course automatically start the services. So there you go, folks. We have gone ahead and configured our provisioning services. Now we need further configuration. We're going to go back into the configuration console and do that. But for now, all the services have started. So we have successfully installed our provisioning services, or a server. Alright, there you go. So how can we confirm that? Simply go here, date installed, and you have all the provisioning services components installed here. Okay. So come back here. We're gonna go ahead and remember we created a farm, so we're gonna go a provisioning services farm. So we're gonna go ahead and connect to that provisioning services farm now. And name or the IP address of the server. So the IP address is we can give the IP address or we can give the name of the server. So the IP address is 172.16.10.40. Now the best practice is to give the FQDN. Okay. Again, we're using the built-in administrator account, the domain account. We're going to save this password and connect. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly troubleshoot this. So it's saying unable to connect to the domain controller. So let's see what's going on over here. Shouldn't be the case, for the simple reason being it is domain joined. Alright, so it is connecting to the domain controller. And the provisioning services over here as well. Alright, so give me a few minutes here. I'm just going to go ahead and put you on pause and go ahead and simply troubleshoot this. Alright, so it looks like there was an issue with the domain. So instead of just putting in the net BIOS, I have to, or the host name, I just have to put the whole, sorry, the net BIOS, I have to put the whole FQDN. So that's perfectly fine. And I'm going to go ahead and connect, and there you go. So here's our first site, and we can actually rename the site. And if you go into properties, we call it Toronto, or whatever you want to call it. And over here we're going to give the host connection. And here are our stores. So we can call this, we can either change the name of this, or we can add a new store. I'm going to call it PVS store 1. Right. And here's our server that's connected to. We're simply going to go ahead and create a device in here for future reference. We're going to call it PVS. Well, all of them are going to be VMs, or not necessarily. We can call it PVS VMs. But we don't have the disk as of yet, so we don't have the MAC address, we don't have the virtual machine, so we're going to abort that. Under the thing, we're going to call it, under device collection, we're going to call it PVS VMs. This is where I wanted to do it. Sorry, my bad. So all the VMs are going to be listed over here that we're going to eventually go ahead and pull them up. Okay. So that was the installation and configuration of your PVS services, and we're gonna go ahead and create a virtual machine on our Xen server once we have that. And I'm not gonna go through the installation of that in this particular video. And once we have our XenApp, Citrix server, we're gonna go ahead and install a virtual machine in there, or create a virtual machine in there, install the operating software, install the Xen server tools, and then we're gonna go ahead and install the VDA, and then on top of that the target device as well, or create a target device. Alright folks, so we have a few steps here. So I'm gonna go ahead and power on our XenApp, our Citrix Xen server, and then create a virtual machine in there, and or create and capture a virtual machine. And as I said, we're gonna skip this part for now. Group policy for PVS target devices. We'll cover that in the group policies chapter. Okay, so to be covered later. Okay. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and prepare for VM image capture. This is through our target device, and we'll follow the rest of the steps. Alright folks, so our Xen server is up, and we're gonna go ahead and install the Xen Center on our domain controller itself, or we could actually install it on the delivery controller. So let's go ahead and install it on our delivery controller, and this way we don't have to create a workstation. If we have the resources, we could create a new machine as a workstation and install it on there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is browse to the IP address of our Xen server, and simply install this small piece of software on it. And there you go. So our Xen Center has been installed, and we can pin this to our taskbar for future reference. And I don't want to go ahead and update it as of yet. I'm going to add the server 172.16.10.30. Now I could also go ahead and provide the URL as well, because I did add that URL in our DNS. So NCI CXS01 at soft.internal. Now the only way it is going to work is if I had already assigned or added a DNS entry, the host A record. Now for any machine that is non-Windows, you have to do that automatically, obviously. And we're gonna save information. And there you go. So now we're gonna go ahead and create a virtual machine. Now this is our first virtual machine in the environment. Okay, so this will take some time, but nevertheless, so new virtual machine. Now before we do that, we have to bind the OS ISO onto the Xen server first. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our Xen server and go into settings of that particular VM and bind ISO. Now we are installing Windows 8.1, so for that, there you go, press OK. We're gonna go back to our Xen Center, pick Windows 8 64, and we're gonna name that virtual machine the very first one. So we're gonna call this Win81 TPL. Okay, template. And right now we're not booting it from network, and we're booting it from the ISO. Number of CPUs, I just want to go ahead and give it 4 for now. I want to install it really fast. And we're gonna start the VM later. I just like to do that to ensure that I have all the configurations appropriately set. At the bottom over here you can see the progress, and there you go. So a template has been created, or the VM. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start that. Now if you don't like the name of this, you can always go back and change the name. It's not a big deal. So we can call this Win81 golden image. Or whatever you'd like. Okay. So the virtual machine has been powered on. If we go ahead and launch the console, we will see the progress, and we can go ahead and install the operating software, and once that has been installed, we will install the Xen server tools in there as well. So I'm going to pause it and come back to you once everything's been installed. Alright folks, so our VM is ready. We're just going to go ahead and name it appropriately, Win81 gold image, okay? Well, I don't really care about this as of the moment, so I'm just going to use the express settings. And then there's no internet connection, so it's just going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and create a local account. So we're going to create a local account. We're just going to call this local admin. Our super secret password, of course. This is the annoying part. So it's going to take another 2-3 minutes, and then I'll be right back with you. Alright folks, so finally our image is here, and we're going to go ahead and we're gonna install the VM tools, Xen server tools in here now. So okay. Okay, so we're gonna minimize this, exit out of the full screen, and install the Xen server tools. Now this is again going to take probably anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, so I'm simply going to go ahead and pause the video and come back once the Xen server tools have been installed, and then we're going to go ahead and prepare the capture of the image, and then we're going to go ahead and capture the image itself. Alright, so finally it popped up. We're just going to run the quick wizard and install the Xen server tools. Alright folks, so Citrix, I apologize, Xen server tools have been installed. Now we're going to go ahead and capture the. So before we go ahead and capture the image, we have to prepare it. Prepare for capturing the image. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to go ahead and add this as a target device in our PVS console. And once we do that, we're gonna go ahead and change the boot sequence from CD to the device, to the network, and then that way we'll be able to capture the image. So let's start. So we're gonna go into networking, and from here we're gonna copy the MAC address, okay, and then we're gonna go into our PVS console. We're simply gonna connect to the farm. Right, and our site is Toronto, and we're going to go ahead and add a host. This is our Xen server information. I'm just going to call it Xen server, and the host name or the IP address, so NCICXS01, that's all.internal. Username is a root, and then of course our password. Simply verify the connection. I know it's successful, so we can proceed. Right, so this is our Xen server connection. So if we look at our vDisk as of the moment, we don't have any vDisk in our vDisk pools. Alright, so in our device collection, under our VMs, we're just going to go ahead and create a device. Actually, why don't we just create it under here, create a device, and we're going to name it exactly the same thing that we had over there, Win81 G-Image. We're going to go ahead and simply, unfortunately we can't paste the MAC address here, so we have to type it in. 26 F4 0A 18 86 Charlie 5. So let's verify that again. 26 F4 0A 18 86 Charlie 5. There you have it, and we're gonna boot it from the vDisk, of course. Okay, for the vDisk we're just gonna leave it empty for now, because really and truly we don't have any. So PVS store, we don't have any. Okay, so there you go, we have it there. Now we're going to go back to our Xen server, and we're simply going to go ahead and install the target device. For that we need to make sure that on our Xen server we have the ISO for PVS attached, and we're gonna go ahead and bind the PVS ISO, and over here eject, and voila. So if we expand this full screen, and we are going to do the target device installation. Right. and there's nothing much to it. It's just a simple clean installation. Alright, so once that's been done, we're just gonna go ahead and launch the imaging wizard. And this is the server address of the PVS. And we're creating a new disk, right? So next, we're going to change this to fixed to dynamic because we don't want to give use a 2 megabyte block. That's perfectly fine. And for the vdisk image, we're just going to say master image, and this automatically gets created as a private disk, so we're just going to put PVD just to make sure that we understand that we have a record of that. For now, we're just gonna go with none, and there you go, folks. Next, and it's gonna be placed in the collection, target name, and voila. So there you go. It has automatically it will optimize it for PVS. So let that run, and once that has been done, we can go ahead and click finish. Alright folks, so the image has been optimized, so it's ready to, we're going to create the vdisk now. So what it's saying is the wizard has successfully created the vdisk. Now to continue the imaging process, you must reboot, and of course we need to reboot it from the network, not from the disk. So we can go back to our provisioning server, and over here, if we refresh it, okay, I'm not sure why it's not showing that over here for now. Okay, so our image is there, or the target is there. Oh, right, so we have to go ahead and reboot it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the boot sequence. So settings, or other properties in this case, boot options, and we're gonna switch it up to network, and we're gonna take these two out. Right, and reboot, yes. So now if we look in our provisioning server, we see that our master image is there, so the vdisk has been created. Now once our VM gets boots up, we're going to go ahead and capture that image, and it automatically will ask us to do that. And then once that has been done, we're going to go ahead and install the VDA. So let's log into that particular server. And for now we have write cache disabled. We could, in future videos we will discuss write cache as well, and we'll configure another disk for that. Alright, so rebooted. Now it's gonna take its time and it's gonna capture that image. Depending on the resources, it can take anywhere from half an hour and upward. So I'm going to pause this video and come back to you guys once it's done. Alright guys, so it's has been more than 15 minutes, so it actually did finish. So simply click on finish, and there you have it. So if we go back to our provisioning services, here is our master image. So if we refresh this, it's currently going to be in a lock status because our VM is on. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install the VDA. So for that we need to go back to our Xen server and bind the CD for instead of the provisioning CD, provisioning server CD, we have to go ahead and bind the XenDesktop CD. Okay. So once that's been done, we go back to our Xen Center, eject, and we'll attach the CD. Give it a minute. Once this has been done, there will be a pop-up when you'll be able to launch the installation CD, or you can simply go into the Explorer and there you have it. So you double click on that, now before we proceed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the control panel. I'm going to expand this. So control panel, internet options, and uncheck the check for revocation list. Right, so once again launch this, and this time around we're simply going to go ahead and install the VDA agent. We are creating a master image, and next. We can do it manually, so nci cdc01.netsoft.internal, test the connection, wonderful, add it, next. And this is where it differs from the VDA for server OS, and since this is desktop, we need to go ahead and enable personal vDisk. Okay, next. We're going to keep everything automatic, and voila. So it's going to ask for a reboot, and once it does the reboot, it's going to go proceed further with the installation as well. So this will take another few minutes, so I'm going to simply pause it and come back to it once it's installed. Alright guys, so the VDA has been installed, so we're going to simply restart the machine. Alright, so our VM has rebooted, so we're simply going to go ahead and log into it one more time. And everything looks good. Alright guys, so now we're just simply going to go ahead and shut it down, and shut down the master image computer. So we're gonna say shut down anyways, and in our provisioning store we're gonna go ahead and create a new store over here, and we're gonna call this PVS store. We don't really have to, but I just like to separate it. So create a store, PVS store 2, and then it's on that server. Validate, yes, and we need to create a new folder, PVS store 2, Okay, for some reason it's not coming, so I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this. Create a new store, PVS store 2. I'm not sure why it's not actually showing up here. It actually should. That is really strange. So now it. Right, so brilliant. So that's been done. Now if we go back here to our Xen Center, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and create a full copy of this. So we're gonna create a full copy, okay, and we're gonna call this provisioning image. Now the reason why we're doing that is because we need a template to be created so that we can auto deploy using PVS instead of machine creation services. So for that we need a template. So unfortunately in Xen server, once you convert a VM into a template, you cannot convert it back into a VM. Okay, so you can deploy from template, but you cannot power on the template as even in any hypervisor. So we're going to create a copy of this and then convert that copy into a template. Alright folks, so our template has been created, or rather the VM has been created. We're just going to go ahead and check the boot option. So it is from the network, so that's great. Since we're giving it 4 CPUs, I'm just going to give it 2. And for the RAM, 2 GB is sufficient. Okay, I'm simply going to go ahead and copy this particular information, the MAC address, and I'm going to copy the name of it as well. Now to convert this into a template, all we have to do is right click and convert to template, and there you go. So it's been converted into a template now. Okay, now what we have to do is we have to create a PVS machine catalog, but before we do that we have to convert our standard machine, or rather image, into a private image into a standard one. So we're going to copy this into the PVS store. Okay, so we're going to copy it from here, copy, go into PVS store, and we're going to simply paste it in here. And once that's been done, we're going to import that into PVS store over here, and then change that into a standard image. Because remember, in private mode it's 1-to-1, so 1 VHD for 1 user, and in standard mode it's 1-to-many, so 1 VHD to many users. Okay, so it's called master image private, so we're just gonna change that into standard. Okay, right, so we're gonna go back into here, into store 2, and we're gonna say search, and here's a standard, add it, and close. But just naming it standard doesn't make it standard, because if you see, the mode is still private. So we're going to double click on that, and we're going to change it into standard. Right now we're going to keep it on cache on server. In the next chapter we will discuss about RAM overflow and hard disk, but for now we'll keep it on cache on server, and we're simply going to press OK. So great, so now we have a standard image because the our mode says cache on server. Alright guys, so what we're going to do now is we're simply going to go ahead and use the XenDesktop setup wizard, and if we were to do that, the next step is it will ask us for the controller. Now I've address, so NCI cdc 01 netsoft.internal. And if you notice here, we don't have any option to add, because it's supposed to auto-populate the XenDesktop host resources. Now, if you remember, we had created a host connection, but this is to the farm for the provisioning server. So what we really need to do is we need to go back to our domain controller and create a host connection over here. So resources. So we're simply going to go ahead, and because we had skipped a step, so we're going to go ahead and add the connection now. So NCI cxs01 netsoft.internal, and we'll provide the credentials for this, and we can call this whatever we want. So Xen server connection, and next is, if you remember that other window, this is where that name, whatever you put, will populate. So we're gonna call this XenDesktop provisioning services VDI. Okay. So next, we're gonna keep it on the same storage. So next, and voila. So we have created this connection resource, which is VDI. And if we go back to our provisioning server again, and this time we go and launch our XenDesktop setup wizard, our name is there, and now if you see auto-populated is the CD or XD PVS VDI. It's the same name that we had given in our studio and our connection and our hosting connection. Okay, so now we press next, and this is the password to our Xen server, and this is the template that we had created. And if you remember, in our Xen server we had created a full clone of this particular image and into PVS image, and then converted that into a template. So it auto picks it up from here. And then the next is the standard vdisk. So if you remember, we had created that, copied the VHD into our PVS store 2 and renamed it into master image std from pvd. Okay, so that's where it picked it up from. So next we have to create a new machine catalog. So I'm just gonna keep things simple, so I'm gonna call it XenDesktop PVS machine catalog, and for Windows 81. Okay, so Windows 8.1 MC PVS. Next, and of course it's desktop operating system. So next, and I'm gonna say no, discard the changes, because I don't want any changes to be remembered. Or I can say save the changes and store them on a separate personal vdisk, but we do not have a separate personal vdisk attached to the system as of yet. We'll look at that in the next scenario. Okay, so we're gonna go with next, and number of virtual machines to be created. You know what, I'm gonna create 10 virtual machines for now, and 2 CPUs I'm gonna give, and I'm gonna keep it at that. Alright, so now we're gonna create next, and we have the option of creating Active Directory accounts. We can create new accounts or import existing accounts. So we're gonna say create new accounts. So next, it's asking us which OU on our Active Directory do we want to save them at. So I have created this particular structure. So I've created an OU XD XenDesktop W81 inside 76, because I want to create 2 OUs in here. The other OUs for other operating system, because I want to differentiate my VMs according to the OS. Okay, now here's the base name. So what are we going to name it as? So I'm just going to name this as NCI XD. Okay, so next, CXD. Okay, next, and we can just go ahead and finish, and this will create 10 XenDesktops in our catalog. And if we head back into our Active Directory, we can see these machines being created. Here you go. So these are the 2 accounts that are being created. So it will keep on creating those machines. So it's not creating over here, it's creating here. And we can also check them in our Xen Center. So these machines are being created. Once 10 have been created, we will try to power on one of them. Alright folks, so this has been completed. So 10 device created, 0 device failed. So if we go into our servers, we still have only 1 server, but into our VMs, we should have 10 now. Okay. There you go. So this was a machine catalog that was created. So there are 10 of those over here. Okay. So going back to our server, we're simply going to go ahead and power the first one. Alright, so it's just powering on. And again, keep in mind this is going to the Wii disk, standard one. Alright guys, so if we notice, we're able to log into it, and we're just going to check the name of this virtual machine as well. And it should be, technically speaking, NCI CXD001. So let's see. First of all, it is connecting, so it has a DHCP IP address through DHCP, I meant. We're just gonna check that, and there you go. So it's a DHCP IP address. And here's IP address as well. Now one thing I noticed, we should have done the work group. Instead of having it in the work group, we should have actually, on the template itself, we should have domain joined it. And had we had done that, we would have had a work group. Instead of having a work group, we would have actually had that. So we're just going to double check that again. And we'll do that in the next video, but just so that you know that this was created, it powers on through not through the hard disk, connected hard disk, because if you look at the settings over here, it's boot through the network, not through the hard disk. Okay. Alright folks, so administration's done. So just to recap, what we have done is we have first and foremost installed the provisioning services, configured the provisioning services, created a virtual machine, this one, and in this particular virtual machine we installed the Xen server tools. We install, if it was a VMware workstation or the VMware ESXi, we would have installed the VM hardware tools. So as of now, we installed Xen Server tools, and then we installed the VDA. We also installed a target device as well, and then we captured the image, and once the image was captured, we copied it into another store, and we converted it from personal vdisk into a standard vdisk. Okay, then we changed the boot sequence of this golden image to network, and then we shut it down, or rebooted it into the vdisk. Then once that was done, we shut it down, and then we created a clone of that and converted it into a template. Now after that, we use XenDesktop setup wizard in our provisioning services. So the XenDesktop setup wizard, and in there we asked it to, we created a machine catalog, and we advised it to create 10 machines. We can create more, as many as you want, and there you go. So it created a virtual machine, and then we were able to power it on as well. So that concludes our test. Alright, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know.